What is up guys, I'm Xteria, and this is the patch 14.11 rundown. This video, we're just going to be talking about what they buffed and what they nerfed. Before we start, let me give you the highlights of this current patch real quick. The things that they buff is the synergy trick shot, and the units they also buff would be Yasuo, Gnar, Syndra, Lissandra. Augments they also buff is Built Different, Grim Harvest, Porcelain Crown, Dragon Lord Crown. And the things they nerfed is units such as Darius because he's very powerful. Same with Garen, he's also very powerful, especially with his hero augment. And then Nautilus because he's a strong CC unit at the moment. And then hero augments such as Lucky Paws and another powerful augment at the moment because a lot of synergies revolve around 2 is too healthy. I think that they're adding this patch is rotating shop. What this is like the mythic shop in League of Legends where we just rate a certain amount of time where it rotates around certain skins. Another thing we're also getting this patch is a new battle pass. This is just the chapter 2 of the current set, so therefore we're gonna have a bunch of new stuff like new arenas, new skins, and some extra cosmetic stuff that we can get over time. On June 12th, we're gonna get a bunch of free stuff because of the 5th year for TFT anniversary. And there's gonna be a bunch of fun game modes that are gonna be coming out during that time as well. So if you wanna try it out, have fun with it. And they're adding new rules to the rank system, where for those of you that are masters, you can actually dual queue with someone if you're under 400 LP or lower. This system I actually don't like personally because it's gonna kinda inflate the rank a little bit and you might win trades. So hopefully it doesn't be out for too long or people don't abuse win trading. This only applies to PC servers and TFT Mobile is going to have it later. For those of you that are at the Middle East, you guys are finally going to get the ME server, or ME for short. So now you can finally have less latency, and it only costs 1 blue essence to transfer for any account at that moment until September 2nd. And speaking of mobile, TFT Mobile now has the team planner, which is something we have on PC for a while. So for you guys that plays TFT on mobile and need team planner, now you finally guys are gonna get it. Alright, now we're finally gonna get into the changes of this current patch, and what we're gonna start with is the traits. We got Trick Shot that got buffed because it's been kind of underpowering lately, but it's only been buffed for level 2 Trick Shot from 55% to 60%, which is only a 5% increase with 4 Trick Shots. So get ready to see Kaisa Bruiser in the next patch being viable again. For tier 1 units that they buffed and nerfed, we're going to start off with is Darius. They actually nerfed his ability damage by a decent amount, but it's not going to affect him too much being one of the strongest openers out there, so don't be afraid to use him still for AP openers. Another tier 1 unit they nerfed is Garen. They actually nerfed his max mana pool by 10. So that means he's going to be casting less and less, so he's less and less tankier. A tier 1 unit that they buffed would be Yasuo, and they buffed his shield, armor, and magic resist. So at level 1, they actually nerfed it by 10, so therefore he's less tankier if he's level 1 on the board. But if you get him level 2, they actually buffed it by a pretty okay amount, which is 5% more armor magic resist. And if you get him level 3, he's just going to be a mega tank, since they buffed it by a lot. And then for tier 2 units that they changed would be Gnar. They actually had to buff him because he's underperforming, so they buffed his stacks from 40 to 45. So that means he's going to get more damage and more resistances. And then Kiana's been performing a little bit too well because Duelist is pretty strong at the moment, and if you play reroll Kiana for Duelist, she's just going to be running people down, so they have to nerf her base AD by 5, which is an okay amount. And then for the tier 4 units, they change is Nautilus. This unit's been performing a bit too well, so they have to nerf him since Warden is actually really strong at the moment, and he has one of the best CC abilities in the current set, so therefore they have to nerf his max mana pool by 10, so therefore it takes him a little bit longer to cast more. One of the most favorited tier 4 units that got nerfed last patch but needs a buff this patch is Syndra. So for the starting butterflies, which is her ability that she starts with, they actually had to nerf it a little bit to make her more fair to play, because if she starts off with too many butterflies, she's going to be doing too much damage, so they have to nerf it by 1 stack. It is a pretty fair trade-off because we get her ability damage increased by a pretty decent amount. So if you have a death cap from having 40% to 45%, it's a huge jump at level 1, and then level 2 is 60% to 70%. So that death cap is going to hurt even harder if you have it on Syndra. So this is actually a pretty good buff overall for Syndra. And then for tier 5 units, the adjustment to Lissandra just wasn't good enough, so therefore they have to buff her ability damage by an okay amount for level 1 and level 2. So therefore it should make her a little bit better, because the way how she works now is she has less CC, so they actually want to bump up her damage instead of having more CC. And then for the augment changes, Cybernetic Bulk and Cybernetic Uplink for all ranks is no longer offered at stage 2-1. Basically, the first augment, you will never get this Cybernetic Bulk and Cybernetic Uplink. And then for build different, they actually nerfed it a little bit too much last patch, so therefore they have to buff it this patch so it can be playable again. Since hero augments are way too powerful at the moment, they want to have a different alternative from hero augments to be strong too. That's a different comp to play. Next up is the augment called Grim Harvest, which is a Reaper augment where it buffs your Reaper units. And instead of getting a Kha'Zix and a Kindred, if you click on this augment, now you get a Kindred and a Yone. So therefore you're a bit stronger early game. And then you want to put the items on Yone so he can carry. Unless you have AP items, just throw it on Kindred. And then the Omni Vamp per stack is buffed by 1%, so therefore it's a bit stronger if you have this augment now, since it's actually underperforming really bad. And on top of that, they also buffed Reaper last patch as well, so this might help it a little bit. I can't tell if Reaper is going to be a strong synergy or not, but this does help it a little bit. And one of the most strongest tier 1 hero augments is Lucky Paws, which is the Kaboko augment. This augment is actually too powerful at the moment because this guy is a raid boss that would never die and just one-shot every unit, so they have to nerf this augment by 25% damage. This doesn't mean that he's going to make him worse, it just means that he's not going to be the unkillable tank that one-shots literally everything. So you can still play it, it's still going to be pretty good. If you see it, just take it. Another outperforming augment is Too Healthy. This augment will give you too much HP on the board, so they have to nerf it by 9 HP. This doesn't mean it makes it worse, same thing like Kaboko if you see it, and if you need it though, just take it, it's still going to be a pretty good augment. And then for the Dragon Lord Crown, instead of getting just a Janna, if you click on this augment, you also get a Janna and a Diana, so therefore you can activate the Dragon Lords on the board right there and then, and you're gonna have technically 3 Dragon Lords then. So therefore if you see this augment and you need it, you're just gonna be super powerful with it. And then you find a Lee Sin, you just win the game with it. Like the Cybernetic Bulk and Cybernetic Uplink, we're not gonna get Final Ascension anymore. That's gonna be offered at 2-1 or basically the first augment, because this augment is a bit too strong in the early game, since most rounds would be lasting around 20 to 25 seconds, so once this activates, you basically just win the round. And then for the Porcelain Crown, this is actually a really strong change. So instead of getting a Lux if you click on this augment, you get an Amumu instead, so you have a really strong tank to start with if you get the Porcelain Crown. And then for the Ornn artifacts, a throwback item that they brought back is Cursed Blade. This item was really broken in set 1, and because how broken it was in set 1, the reason why it wasn't released during the Ornn artifact patch was because it was too bugged, so therefore they're gonna release it now because it's actually working. So what it does is, every time you attack on a target, it reduces their HP by 3%, which is a really strong amount. And then for every 13 attacks, you would reduce their star level by 1. So therefore, if they're a 3-star unit, it can make them go down to a 2-star unit. This item was so broken back in the day because it only takes 1 hit to reduce their star level, and then what that does is you can almost basically just one-shot that unit right after. And the stats this item gives you is attack speed and some magic resist. Another Ornn artifact they have to nerf is Diamond Hands. This item is performing a bit too much, so they have to nerf the health from 400 to 300. Next up is the support items, and one of the biggest changes they did is the Moonstone Renewer. This item has been performing a bit too well, so they had to nerf it by flat 100 shield to 60 shield. So that means the shield is going to be a lot less than it was before, and then the max shield is from 400 to 360. So this item is, yes, a lot weaker. It still doesn't mean that it's not one of the top support items to pick. I would still say to choose this item still because the way how it works is way too good to have. And then we got like a minor change, like Needlessly Big Gem. You get some more HP whoever holds it, so it went from 250 to 300. And then here are some small changes, which is like for augments, we got some ghostly damage increase per stack. So they buffed it a little bit at the level 4 ghostly because for whatever reason, I guess they want a ghostly to be really strong. So if you have a ghostly, you should be winning with it almost no matter what. And then we got a pretty good amount of small changes for units, which is tier 1 unit, which is Kha'Zix. They actually just buffed his AD ratio overall. So instead of just having 340% for all levels, it's going to be 340% level 1 and 2, and then level 3 is up by 10%. And then same thing like Kha'Zix for Sivir, they buffed her AD by 10% at level 3, and then her attack speed, they buffed it by 5% at level 3 as well. Following that trend, Aatrox's ability healing got nerfed a bit too much, so they want to buff his level 3 by 20% healing more. Oh, and his level 2 is also buffed by 10% more. Another tier 2 unit that they also buff is Senna. They buffed her AD ratios by 5 more percent at level 3, and also her flat AD by 5% at level 3 as well. A tier 3 unit that they also buff is Diana. Same thing like Kha'Zix, instead of being just 30% flat damage reduction for all levels, they made it to level 1, level 2 is 30%, while level 3 of Diana is 35% damage reduction. And then her on-hit ability is also buffed, the same thing. Level 1 and 2 is the same, but level 3 is buffed by 10% AP. Just like Diana, but the thing about Yone is he's not performing too well, so they want to buff his level 3 overall with his shield being up a little bit more by 25%, so he can sustain a little bit longer. And they also buffed his damage by 5 more percent, so he's not too strong like he was during the beginning of set 11. And then for Kane, they just buffed his HP by 50 more. So this makes him last a little bit longer. So this changes is not too dramatic, but it does help it a little bit. And there's a lot of like bug fixes, but the main one I want to point out is Aurelia's ability can now crit correctly. Because before, if you had IE, it actually doesn't work on Aurelia, so therefore you want to put IE on her. And then another major thing is that starting portals no longer fail to work when sometimes people leave the voting area early, because sometimes it kind of messes up a little bit, so therefore they kind of fix that. And that's it for my patch 14.11 rundown. If you have any questions, you can just let me know in the comment section down below, or if you just want to say hi, go for it. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Later.